Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, everyone hit the like button. That helps boost the show. I'm joining you from Hangzhou, China, so bear with any technical issues and let me know if there are any. Scott, I wanted to open up this show with the latest breaking news, and I'll just read what is being reported right now regarding the Strait of Hormuz. It is being said that Iran has reopened the strait. According to, first it was Donald Trump who went to Truth Social and said these exact words: Iran has just announced that the Strait of Iran is fully open and ready for full passage. Thank you. Interesting, I think, gaffe there, calling it the Strait of Iran. But then a source close to, according to reports, Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf said that this opening is actually practically limited based on the fact that there's now a 10-day ceasefire between Lebanon, Hezbollah included, and Israel. And these conditions, as part of a practically limited reopening, is that all passage is rerouted through Iranian territorial waters via Larak Island. Only commercial ships, number 2 here, are allowed, with Iran deciding which ships qualify, enemy-linked vessels excluded, and tows still required for security provision and passage. And then all transit coordinated by the IRGC Navy, with Iran fully controlling passage through the strait. So, Scott, maybe you can react to this, because there's been a flurry of developments that have led up to this, warnings by Iran about the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb, the ceasefire, which saw Israel, Lebanon come to an agreement on this, and then Israel's breaking in the beginning. Now it seems like things have died down a bit, and Trump is guaranteeing that Israel won't attack during these 10 days, and Iran making good on its word, saying it would do something in goodwill around this ceasefire, because it's been pressuring this since the very beginning of these negotiations with the U.S. So talk about your thoughts and assessment on where we are now.
Well, as I've said, the ceasefire wouldn't have happened unless the United States recognized the futility of continuing military operations. So it's the United States that's looking for an off-ramp. Iran, too, wants an off-ramp, but it's not going to, make, concessions that the United States and Israel haven't earned on the battlefield, and the United States and Israel have earned nothing on the battlefield. I think people need to understand that strategically, the United States and Israel lost this conflict. They've achieved nothing. None of their objectives have been achieved. Iran has emerged with the regime intact, continuing to be able to launch ballistic missiles with great effectiveness and total control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran hasn't yielded on any of the points regarding nuclear enrichment, etc. And yet here we are with Trump declaring victory, because this is what it's all about. This is about political issues. This isn't about real practical issues. This is about how Donald Trump can spin things to his political advantage so that he can declare that without his decisive intervention, nothing would have happened. So we're just watching a giant political game in process. The Strait of Hormuz is open in the way that the Iranians have determined it to be open. And Donald Trump can crow all he wants about this, that, and the other thing, but whose hands on the handle controlling the spigot? It's not an American hand; it's an Iranian hand, and that which they have opened, they can close down. So, now we have to see how Trump, goes forward with this. Whether he will ignore the Iranian statement, continue to double down on the role he played, or will he, as he has done in the past, suddenly declare the Iranians to be liars and thieves and scoundrels and threaten and bluster more? But the problem is, threaten and bluster more what? I know that Colonel McGregor is out there talking about, a major American offensive that's going to begin next week. To do what? With what? We're not bringing anything to the table that we haven't already brought. And any target worth hitting has already been hit. Anything that we're going to hit from now on is an empty building. I mean, the Iranians have shuffled the deck. Pete Hegseth can claim that we're watching them do this, that, and the other thing, but clearly we don't watch them do this, that, and the other thing, because, that Air Force that we said we destroyed 100%, it's up and flying right now. The Navy that we said we destroyed, it's in control of the Strait of Hormuz with ships out there delivering mines. Every aspect of Iran's military has survived this conflict. We have effectively done nothing except show that we are impotent. Do we really want to put that on display again? And I think not. The other thing is there's certain realities. Europe runs out of aviation fuel in 11 days. That means the entire European aviation industry ceases to function. The price, I just bought a airline ticket. The fuel surcharge was, about 1/3 of the cost of the ticket. And it's going to go up because it's gone crazy. Trump can't afford to go to war with Iran. To continue this war. He needs this conflict to end. Trump has a political problem here at home. He can sell, his lies and his con game to his base, but his base is reducing. There's people spinning off the base. People aren't buying into his line anymore. And if he's going to, reconvince people, he needs to put something on the table. He needs to bring an end to this conflict and then, spend the next month or so telling people how he's the greatest thing in the world, that this peace wouldn't have happened without him, and see if he can go into the summer with some sort of momentum. And it's not impossible. The economic difficulties we have right now, if he can get energy flowing, if he can get the price of energy down, he'll have one of those artificial boosts come summer, where the problems that he's responsible for go away. And he says, it's because of me. I'm the greatest thing in the world. And maybe he convinces enough people so that the Republicans can hold on to the House in November, which is what this is all about. If you think this is about real national security issues, you don't know Donald Trump. This isn't about national security. This is about Donald Trump's trying to salve an inferior political position, one that if he doesn't reverse course, will destroy his political legacy. If the Republicans lose the House in November, it's over for Donald Trump. It's over. He'll spend the next 2 years being impeached, and that's all he'll be known for. And if he continues to play stupid games, he could lose the Senate, and then he'll be impeached and convicted. So Trump can't afford for this war to continue. So I think we're going to see a lot more positive spin coming out from Trump, where he's going to try and say that he's responsible for all these things happening.
Yeah, and Scott, he's almost guaranteeing that in the next number of days we have, or maybe a few days, that there's going to be some kind of deal reached. And of course, it's being framed as a deal. It's going to be completely favorable to what he claims are U.S. interests. But then there's the for Trump, he's also saying that this blockade that has been 5 days or so in the running is going to continue, despite the fact that the Strait of Iran, according to him, has been reopened. What do you make of this? Because it's very contradictory. Of course, oil prices. You mentioned elections and the price of energy and all of that. Obviously, a major part of this, maybe the part of this that is influencing his actions and his administration's actions. But it's always very contradictory. And of course, the volatility of these markets is very sometimes predictable and very unpredictable, leading to your conclusions, I think, being very apt. So talk about what you think of this blockade continuing despite this. Is this all just huff and puff, or is this just more warmongering amidst an attempt to still get an off-ramp at the same time, which seems to be a big play recently? Yeah.
What blockade are we talking about?
Yeah, the one that was supposedly declared 4 or 5 days ago, where and of course CENTCOM has been saying they're interdicting
the entire Indian Ocean.
Yep,
that one. The one where American ships can't get anywhere within 20 miles of the Iranian coast without fear of being sunk. Therefore, all ships transiting the Indian Ocean out of the Strait of Hormuz hug the Iranian coast and aren't interdicted by the U.S. Navy. The one where China says, pound sand, we're doing whatever the hell we want and you won't touch us because that'll be the end of you. That one. The one where the Russians say, I dare you to touch a Russian ship. That one. That blockade. Yeah, no, there is no blockade. It's again, this is part of the game that Donald Trump's playing, to be seen, to create perception. But there's no blockade, none whatsoever.
Yeah, and then there's the ceasefire element. I mean, Iran had, as you know, Scott, this 10-point proposal that's been around for a really long time, well before negotiations started between the U.S. and Iran. And a big part of it was, a cessation and a real end to hostilities on all of the fronts in the region, the resistance fronts. And now we are in this 10-day ceasefire period. I'm curious on your thoughts on, obviously these two developments are linked, but at the same time, we have a history here that we need to, I think, consider. And how do you think Iran is going about this in terms of moving on in these negotiations with the United States amidst the ceasefire? And then, of course, the reasons and the roots of the ceasefire itself. Anything you want to comment on this?
Well, look, we just have to get down to basic facts here. Fact A, America lost the war. That's why America was looking for an off-ramp. If we were winning the war, we wouldn't be looking for an off-ramp. We just keep hammering away till the Iranians surrendered. We're the ones that said we need this thing to come to an end because our bases were being eviscerated. Israel had no more defense. Iran's missiles got stronger and stronger, and we had reached the limit of our escalatory capabilities with conventional weapons. The next step would have been literal cultural genocide. I mean, that's what Trump was talking about, the erasure of Iranian civilization. Not that he would have been able to do it, but the measures that would have had to have been undertaken to, put action to those words would have been war crimes beyond belief. So bad that I believe that American generals told the president, no, we're not doing this. This is why he had to find an off-ramp, because the military balked and said, we're not committing war crimes on your behalf. Then there was the failed raid against the Isfahan, nuclear storage facility. We can't make an amphibious assault on Karg Island because we'd lose everybody. Trump had no cards. It was done, finished. So he sought this off-ramp. Remember that, because he sought this off-ramp. There's a reason. And the reason was America couldn't accomplish its mission. So what is he doing? Setting us up to do what? Accomplish a mission we already know we can't accomplish. No, he wants a peace deal. But it has to be a peace deal that's politically viable for him. He sent J.D. Vance to Islamabad together with, Kushner and Witkoff. They were this close to a final deal, this close. The Iranians came loaded for bear. The Iranians came with all the documents, all the facts, the whole thing, and they were this close to nailing down a deal. Why? Because Iran holds all the cards, but the problem is, if the United States accepted the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, then it would be clear that the Americans were defeated, and that's politically unacceptable for Trump. So Trump scuttled the negotiations, sent the high-profile teams back to their respective countries, and then started playing stupid games, bluster, blockade, this, that, the other thing. Meanwhile, the negotiations are still taking place. I don't think many people realize that, but the United States left a big technical team, and the Iranians left a big technical team, and they're working out all the details to finalize the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. And at the appropriate time, Trump will come in, and once he's created the perception that his intervention made this deal possible, he will implement this deal. And that's where we are. Everything else is just gamesmanship. Everything else is just theater. Lebanon's an interesting issue because, the Israeli-Hezbollah conflict is not an extension of the Israeli-Iranian conflict. The Israeli-Hezbollah conflict is because Israel occupies Lebanon. That's it. Israel stops occupying Lebanon and Hezbollah goes away. It's not an issue. So, that's always going to be a more nuanced, difficult problem that's not going to be resolved as part of this comprehensive peace plan. There needed to be a ceasefire, but I don't believe that the deal that's going to be cut in Islamabad is going to solve the Lebanese problem. It'll leave the door open for a solution to be figured out at a future point. But at some point in time, Israel and Hezbollah are going to continue to go at it because the Lebanese government has sold out to Israel. As long as Israel continues to occupy southern Lebanon, it will be resisted, and that conflict will never end until Israel is evicted from southern Lebanon. Iran will continue to support Hezbollah, and that's just the reality of it. That'll be its own little war. Ansarallah, look, Ansarallah is getting ready to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. If they do that, it's a death sentence to Saudi Arabia's energy-based economy, which has diverted the bulk of their oil export capacity from the east to the west through a pipeline. I think that this one's readily resolved. I think that this one is directly linked to a termination of this. Ansarallah will always loom until there's a solution to Israel-Gaza. There's going to be some unresolved issues once the basic U.S.-Iranian conflict ends. But the important thing for the Iranians, and this is what people need to understand, because I just hear people saying, why would Iran do this? Why would Iran agree to this? Why would they got them by the balls? Why not just keep squeezing them, man? Well, the guys are saying they got them by the balls, keep squeezing. You're the one sitting safely at your desk at home. Don't have to worry about anything. But if you're an Iranian that for 5 decades now has lived in an economy that's been constrained by economic sanctions, economy that's never been able to live up to its potential, with Security Council resolutions plastered on, IAEA resolutions plastered on, unable to, effectively engage with BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, to invest into the Eurasian Economic Union. I mean, all these things. And suddenly you have the possibility where all sanctions are going to be lifted. No more constraints. You're in total control of your economy, total control of your economic future, who you do business with, how you do business. Suddenly the Iranian government can deliver on 5 decades of promises to the Iranian people of a better life. Do you guys maybe understand now why Iran might say, I'll let go of their balls? Because Iran doesn't exist to squeeze the balls of the West. Iran exists to do right by the Iranian people. And now there's a chance for that to happen. So this is a huge Iranian victory, a huge Iranian victory.
Yeah, and then that's sad. You mentioned those resistance fronts too. Iran will achieve all this without having, contrary to what some believe or what I've even gotten messages about, they've done this all without abandoning these resistance fronts. In fact, even if these problems aren't resolved, which they can't, you're exactly right, they can't be resolved. Israel is Israel, and it's going to continue to try to terrorize and continue to occupy and do what it does against Lebanon, Gaza, all of that. It's not going to stop. But at the same time, Iran can achieve this victory and continue to support those fronts. And it'll make it a lot harder. Then the U.S. will look very foolish to then reverse all of this just because Iran is going to continue to support these fronts. So politically, it is a very interesting moment, and geopolitically, because it signals that, as you said, Iran holds the cards, and that these cards, they kind of exist in perpetuity, and it will affect the future of how the U.S., if it continues to want to conduct regime change against Iran or try to Israel, all of this moment just doesn't go away. It will. There's a foundation here that's very interesting. Your comments on this? I've been thinking about this for a few days.
Yeah, let me jump in on this one, because Iran holds cards right now because we're in a state of conflict. But you do understand that the game changes once you de-emphasize the military and you re-emphasize, or you start emphasizing the economic. Iran can't play it both ways. Iran doesn't get to hold the balls and then go play BRICS, international, economic participant. They're going to have to release. And when they do that, now Iran becomes part of the global economy. And that's a whole different game where different stresses can be brought to play, different restrictions, et cetera. And so, what happens when Iran joins BRICS? Now Iran becomes a hostage to Indian-Chinese animosity. They're in the middle of that now. They've got to play that. You see, the world doesn't become, totally simple for Iran. It becomes far more complicated, in fact, when Iran now has to operate, in accordance with the rule books, in accordance with the rules of fair competition. Iran has been playing the sanctions violation game for decades. They're used to, floating ships out in the open sea, waiting for markets to open up, offloading. They're not going to be doing that anymore. They're going to be part of the free and open economy, and they're going to have to compete. And I think it's going to be great for Iran. But the idea that Iran emerges from this retaining this superiority that it's gained through this victory, that's not the case at all, because Iran will have to learn how to live in peace and harmony with its regional neighbors. It's not going to be able to sit there in a permanent state of conflict and tension and hostility. And that now we come down to the Strait of Hormuz. this is going to be fascinating to see how this plays out. You know, I think that Iran has earned a right to say that they, in a period of time, for security guarantees, must retain control over the Strait of Hormuz as a way of leveraging everybody to make sure that everybody abides by their agreements. But Iran wants to join the family of nations, which means Iran wants to comply with the rule book, which is the United Nations Charter and the foundation of international law that's derived therefrom. And one of that is the law of the sea. The Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway, openly recognized as such. And for Iran suddenly unilaterally to declare that it's not, that it belongs to them, puts Iran smack dab in violation of international law, where Iran doesn't want to be. So I do think there's going to be some sort of compromise. However they work this out, I don't know, but I could imagine a 10 to 15 year treaty with Iran, the United States, and the Gulf Arab states, which creates, Iran has control, can toll, but others are involved too. That money will be collected and distributed for reconstruction purposes for a period of time. But like any toll booth that's linked to the construction of a highway, I'm thinking of the New York State Thruway, where once you pay it off, you're supposed to stop collecting tolls. Of course, New York State will never do that because they always want the money. But the point is, at some point in time, Iran will have to relinquish control of the Strait of Hormuz back to the international community. That's just a requirement of international law, and Iran is a nation that wants to comply. So I think there's going to be some compromise there. Everybody's saying Iran's going to control this forever. No, they're not. It's impossible for Iran to control it forever. That would create a huge problem for Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. Qatar. None of them are going to allow that to happen. The United States won't allow that to happen because that means that Iran now controls the throttle for the global economy. It's unacceptable. But Iran earned the right to be able to have that control of the throttle for the near term as a security guarantee, given the fact that the United States and Israel have shown no ability to tell the truth, to negotiate in good faith, to act with perfidy in mind. I do think Iran is in a good position to create some sort of treaty-based arrangement that gives them control for security purposes, but that it gets relinquished down the road. It has to, in order for Iran to, conform with international law. I always love that people say, how can you mention international law? Hey, you know what? The guys that say you don't know anything about how the world works. I'm sorry. I know the United States violates international law on a daily basis. The United States also complies with international law on a daily basis. The entire freaking world works on the basis of international law on a daily basis. You have no freaking clue what you're talking about. Yes, there are violations of it, but what do you think makes all this shit work?
Yeah. Well, on the question of the Strait of Hormuz and its status, I think there are two contesting ideas. I think we have Iran and Oman. They've said that it is majorly a part of their territorial waters. A lot of the world views it as international waters because of how important it is for global trade. And I could definitely see, Scott, given that this is the framework they're working on, and you brought up the United Nations Conventions on Law of the Seas, most nations, except for the United States, have signed on to that. So I could definitely see a scenario where in the future, as things develop and there is security guarantees involved, I could see Iran actually even reaching out to the rest of the region, even those that were hostile to Iran, as the U.S. was using them, the Gulf states, et cetera, as their launching pads. But I could see them reaching out and saying, how do we govern this together? And that gives Iran a whole lot of leverage too, because it gives Iran, and Oman could be a part of this, a lot of leeway in how it looks in front of the entire international community, and also brings a really interesting solution to preventing maybe outside aggression from dictating what happens here. It would be a really interesting, I think, thing.
It's going to be a treaty. There's going to be a treaty that comes out of this. There has to be a treaty that comes out of this. If you look at the end of the Second World War, the United Nations, handed out certain mandates to deal with post-colonial issues. Iran can be given a mandate. There's creative, innovative solutions here that go beyond Iran simply declaring we own the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran and Oman saying that, we jointly own it. You don't. It's an international water. I mean, by law, it's international waterway. It's just the way it is. And so there's going to have to be a creative solution here. But I do think Iran has a right to say that for the foreseeable future, that it is given the ability to shut it down as a security guarantee. There's very few things that you can use as a security guarantee against the United States because we are liars. We negotiate in bad faith. We do. This one hurts. This one we can't control. I mean, we don't have a solution to it. So I think giving Iran the ability to shut her down for a period of time while the chips that have fallen are sorted out from this conflict is okay. But at some point in time, if you think about it, BRICS is going to become a bigger player in this than the United Arab Emirates is a member of BRICS, and so is Iran. They're going to have to learn to get along. Saudi Arabia was invited. It may come back in now because BRICS is the emerging, global forum of note. China, Russia, India, all major players in terms of the energy markets. China and India in terms of energy coming out. I just think that there's a lot more room for a multilateral, treaty-based solution to this problem. I think you're right. There's going to be a creative solution that involves everybody.
Yeah, and Scott, I don't know if you saw there. In moments like these, we see the entirety of the breadth of, I think, contradictions and conflict rear heads because it's such a decisive moment historically for a war like this. Well, Donald Trump came out during this Strait of Hormuz rollout of the news that Iran was reopening it under conditions. And he said about NATO, because I think what we've seen also in this is that NATO and the United States are indeed at a much bigger rift than maybe some might believe. But he said, now that the Hormuz Strait situation is over, I received a call from NATO asking if we would need help. I told them to stay away unless they just want to load up their ships with oil. They were useless when needed, a paper tiger. What do you make of this rift? This has been going on since February 28th, when a lot of these European countries were just not going to endorse this war, which, of course, made Trump very angry. And curious on your thoughts about this rift, because it goes all the way into the Ukraine conflict, which has seemingly taken a backseat in attention, but still very much going on.
Well, this rift dates back to 2016, before Donald Trump was elected the first time around. He belittled NATO. He said they weren't pulling their fair share, that NATO nations needed to pay a greater percentage of their GDP. I think the talk at that time was to bring it up to 2% GDP. Now it's up to 5%, could go up even higher, but it doesn't matter. Trump has never viewed the NATO relationship in terms of geopolitical stability factors. He's viewed it as a business relationship, straight up business relationship. Are you paying your fair share? How can we make money? How can we sell more weapons to you? Things of this nature. And so there's always been a rift there because NATO is supposed to be a transatlantic defensive alliance. And NATO's always played a subordinate role to American national security and foreign policy interests. But when Europe and America were largely aligned, being a subordinated role to a posture that you agreed with, you could pretend that you weren't subordinated, that you were equals. But now we have the United States going off on its own direction, and we in Europe and the United States are totally divergent on many issues, and we just saw that manifested with the situation in the Persian Gulf. So now it's clear that from the European perspective, the only way that NATO works is if they surrender to the United States and do what the United States wants, which they're not willing to do. And from the American perspective, it's now a bad business deal. We're not getting anything out of it that we want. Ukraine has cost us a lot of money with no discernible benefits. I just think as a business relationship, which is what Trump has made NATO, it's a failed business, and Trump is looking to cash out. The difference this time is that in the past, Congress has always said, you got to go through us, which he has to, and Congress wasn't going to support that. I think right now there's a lot of people in Congress that are bitter about how NATO has behaved, and the other difference too now is that in the past NATO was willing to do what it took to keep the United States in. And now you have the Europeans meeting saying, we recognize the inevitability of the American divorce. What do we need to do to have a Europe-only, security framework? So I think the politics of divorce are far different today than they were in 2016. And I think we're looking at a real possibility of the United States leaving NATO either partially or in totality as early as this summer.
Yeah. It seems like things are really falling apart for this united collective West front that has been, I guess, going on for many decades now. But Scott, I'm really curious on your thoughts on this. In the coming days, we're going to see the United States and Iran through these talks likely come out with something that if it's some kind of deal. And I'm curious on what you believe, if there's anything that we're going to see surprising about it. You mentioned the memorandum of understanding that's already been, on the table. But is there anything that's going to surprise us, or do you believe that Trump in the U.S. can find a way to actually reframe these conditions that Iran has, which, in terms of a long-lasting end to this conflict, will be likely a requirement for Iran to have set in place in order to, give Iran confidence that this won't happen again, or at least it won't happen again for a foreseeable future?
I think the most important thing for the Iranians is to get all sanctions lifted against it, to bring it fully back into the family of nations. At that time, Iran will be sort of liberated to enter into more broad-based security arrangements with both China and Russia. Russia has signed a security framework agreement with Iran, and they're complying with it. But it's very difficult to enter into a broad-based security agreement when you have pre-existing conditions such as conflict with the United States that would, if Russia was to do a full embrace of Iran, would mean that Russia's now party to the conflict. Russia's had to play certain games, and so there's been limitations to what Russia can and can't do, or at least what Russia is willing to do. And the same thing with China. But I think once Iran becomes fully liberated, they'll be able to renegotiate their relationship with both Russia and China. And this is a security guarantee. This strengthens Iran. And I think both Russia and China have taken a look at this conflict and understand the emerging weaknesses of of America. First of all, China. Look, the policy of the United States regarding China, as expressed in the 2025 National Security Strategy, was one where we were going to contain China and curtail China, that we were going to demonstrate to the Chinese our conventional military overmatch, meaning China didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell to take us on because we were just so powerful. That's over. Part of this framework was not only that we would have our own inherent conventional military supremacy over China, but that we were backed by 3 regional alliances that just made it impossible for the Chinese to have a move. The tripartite agreement between the United States, Japan, and South Korea, AUKUS between Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States, and then, of course, the Quad involving India, Japan, the United States, and Australia. These 3 security frameworks, were going to hold the Chinese in place. None of them exist. They exist in name only, but they're all dead. Tripartite agreement. The Achilles heel, of course, is South Korea and Japan's dependence upon Middle Eastern oil. Japanese, 93%. South Korea, 43%. Their economies are crashing. Moreover, the security umbrella that was put in there, the security agreement, that the United States says we're here to back you up, was linked to ballistic missile defense shields that not only don't work because they're the same ones that were used by Israel that didn't work against Iranian missiles, and the Chinese and North Koreans have missiles that are as good or better, but have been stripped away. Showing the South Koreans and the Japanese that they're not the top priority of the United States. They've stripped away air defense, sent it off to Israel, not even the Gulf Arab state, to Israel. And so say goodbye to the tripartite agreement. Both Japan and South Korea now understand that there's a need to get along with China, to get along with North Korea, as opposed to be positioned to contain them, and et cetera. They don't trust the United States anymore. AUKUS, the United Kingdom, is out. They hate the United States right now. Keir Starmer is basically called Trump an enemy to the world. And Australia, is sitting there going, the whole concept of AUKUS is we were going to get nuclear submarines that we're not getting right now. And two, it was supposed to be to provide for our security, and we're sunk. Thanks to the United States action in the Middle East, we have no diesel fuel. Because we have no diesel fuel, we have no ability to transport goods. Our stores are bare. We're running out of energy. It's a disaster. So, there goes AUKUS. And the Quad, same thing. Japan out, Australia out, India. India is recognizing that they need to deal with the same economic realities that Iran needs to deal with, meaning good, close relations with BRICS, that the United States is the enemy, not the friend, that they need stability, regional stability, and that the United States, as long as it's aligned with Israel, represents the antithesis of that. So the Quad is out. There goes America's, Pacific dreams. Europe, we just talked about the collapse of NATO. And so when we talk about, the future of Iran is going to be plugging into a new global reality, which means it's not just about reduced American military presence in the Middle East, but reduced American military presence everywhere, because America is a power in decline. One of the things that this Iran conflict showed is that we're not as strong as we think we are in terms of conventional power. There are limitations, and that we have been building on legacy capabilities that have ignored advances. And the biggest advances that we've ignored is ballistic missiles. We don't have defensive structures capable of successfully defending ourselves against the most advanced ballistic missile threats in the world. This is similar to what the U.S. Army is confronting, in the Marine Corps as well, that we can't operate in a modern battlefield. If you put the U.S. Army on the battlefield in Ukraine, they'd all be dead in a day, because they don't know how to operate in drone warfare. They don't know the realities of drone warfare. They have tactics that aren't conducive to survivability in drone warfare. We don't know how to operate drones in depth. We don't know how to operate drones in an integrated environment. This is everything that the Ukrainians and the Russians are doing. The Ukrainians sent 2 little teams off to a major NATO exercise and stopped the NATO advance cold. Just 2 little FPV drone teams. They didn't even have all the other drone capabilities that get factored in, layered in. Ukrainian anti-shipping drone went out to a naval exercise and sank every NATO ship in the exercise without them even knowing it. And the Russians are better than the Ukrainians in many aspects of drone warfare. So, the United States is a great power that has not been that took its eye off the ball. And from a military perspective, we've been convincing ourselves that we're a superpower for so long that when it finally came time to get tested, we found out we're not. And what's going to be needed to fix this problem is beyond comprehension in terms of the scope and scale. We literally have to redo everything we do, and we do this in a political environment where nobody likes to admit failure. I mean, who's going to stand up and say, it's my fault that for the last 30 years of my career, I've been pursuing the wrong thing? No one's going to do that. So it's going to take a long time for the United States to fix the problems it has, if it can ever fix it. One of the things about losing a war, and we lost this war if we ever can admit it, is that there's lessons learned, and maybe we can go back and draw upon these lessons and make ourselves more efficient militarily. But that's a double-edged sword, because the United States doesn't know how to behave responsibly. I'd like to see us diminish the military aspects of our foreign relations and start emphasizing diplomatic things. But, we're spending $1.5 trillion on our military next year, and Marco Rubio has slashed the State Department's budget by 50%. So there we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think though that's a really important point of emphasis is that yeah, the U.S. in terms of its the lesson here is what it views and what it has quote unquote invested in as a military power is not only not working, but really showing this glaring need for an actual massive change in how the U.S. behaves around the world, which would, of course, a massive change like this would be a benefit to people, ordinary people in the United States, and it would actually give the United States an opportunity to figure out what kind of identity it will have in this changing world. Because I think one of the big lessons here that maybe people underestimated before February 28th was that, you know, whether it's Iran or Russia or China, like these countries have certain advantages that just make it a war as the U.S. is planning, quote unquote, and preparing for is, you know, it's kind of a fool's errand. It leads to just more disasters, and it leaves the U.S. even weaker. And that's not something that these big, especially the big business, will survive very long going down this path. It'll be bad for it. So, what do you make of the overall like this lesson in terms of this changing world? We're in a much different world. Even this last month, 6 weeks, 7 weeks now, seems to have changed a lot of things about how we see it or how we should see it.
Well, there's the problem. Perception creates its own reality, and as I said, we're in the United States. We're caught up in theater, not reality. We're caught up in the theater of Trump politics. Again, we just have to get down to the foundational realities. When we talk about the United States today, we're not talking about a constitutional republic. I mean, anybody who's trapped in the thinking of, you know, we've got to empower Congress and we need the courts to become involved and all this kind of stuff. No, we're past that. We live in a dictatorship. Donald Trump has declared it to be a dictatorship. Donald Trump has declared the Supreme Court doesn't matter, that he can disagree with their decisions and he can move forward in total disregard. And what can the Supreme Court do? They can turn to Congress, but Congress has abrogated its responsibilities across the board. When you have a leader like Mike Johnson, who just has stopped being the House leader and the Speaker of the House and started being just a compliant rubber stamp for Donald Trump, that means Congress doesn't exist anymore. There's no checks and balances. We have failed the basic underlying principle of American democratic, constitutionally based government, which is checks and balances, 3 separate but equal branches of government. Federal is 51. If you guys want to go read about it, James Madison laid it out in great detail. So we're not there. We are a cult of personality. That's what we are today. We're a nation where one man is out there, you know, and everything's about him. It's not about, he doesn't care about the American people. He doesn't care about national security. He doesn't care about anything. He only cares about Donald Trump. And he uses everything to promote the Trump brand. And sadly, a sufficient number of Americans have bought into this. And that's why he's politically empowered. But, you know, so when we talk about, you know, what needs to be done, we can't be, you know, coming up with solutions that are defined by problems that are premised on the notion of, you know, constitutional due process and checks and balances. We're in a new world where we have to talk about the cult of personality and the fact that this man, everything revolves around him. And that's what we're talking about right now. You know, the solution to the problem in the Middle East isn't about what's to do best for regional security or global security. From the American perspective, the solution is what plays best politically for Donald Trump, what positions him to be more politically empowered come summer, moving into midterm elections. It's about shaping, you know, perceptions, because perceptions create their own reality. And, you know, so it's very difficult to, you know, to talk about an American, you know, how America is going about finding a solution with the rest of the world. What the rest of the world is dealing with reality. You know, how do we repair the rift in international law that's taken place? People need to remember that this war between the United States and Israel and Iran is an illegal war of aggression, lacking any legitimacy under international law, any legitimacy under constitutional law in the United States. Pure war of aggression, which is the highest war crime ever. You know, the world's tried to deal with this, how to repair that. And so the world and the United States aren't even on the same script. We're reading off of two totally different scripts, and somehow we've got to bring them together. And that's going to be the greatest challenge right now. You said, how are they going to, how is Iran going to sell this, and how is the United States going to sell it? Again, we're speaking to two different audiences altogether. And it's, I guess the only way this works is if Trump just focuses solely on his narrative and ignores the fact that much of what he's saying can be contradicted by reality, because whatever comes out of this peace agreement, it's going to be, playing primarily to the 10 points that Iran has put on the table, not the 15 points that the United States put on the table.
Yeah, those 15 points, you read them. It's just a lot of the same gobbledygook that the Trump administration has been saying about Iran for so long, which some of them don't even have any basis to be even negotiated upon. So, I totally agree with that. And I guess I'm wondering, Scott, in terms of lessons then for the other side, for the multipolar world. I mean, we have Iran, of course, which is in the war directly and had to fight for survival and for its defense and sovereignty, etc. So there are a lot of lessons there for Iran to learn and come away from, especially being on the winning side, as you said. But then there's Russia, there's China, and there's really the rest of the, as you call it, family of nations that are moving in this direction for more sovereignty, for maybe a world where the dollar is not dominant anymore, and more freedom to be able to develop independently and without fear of aggression. What lessons does the world on this side of the aisle glean from what's happened here, and what might what might be expected to happen here in the coming days?
Well, let's look at China. You're in China right now. China's vulnerability to global energy markets has been exposed. China's economy is at risk right now. If this embargo, if this inability to get oil flowing freely from Iran and the Middle East continues, China's economic growth is threatened. And so this is a big vulnerability that's been exposed. The other vulnerability that's been exposed is China can't, there's no replacement for the petrodollar. I mean, that's just a reality. People keep talking about, well, we're going to sell it in yuan. Does China have yuan printing presses out there right now just banging away? The Chinese currency isn't, the foundation of the Chinese currency isn't built upon the same foundation as the petrodollar, and the Chinese aren't ready to make that leap yet either. So I think what we're seeing is that, and
they don't want to, and they don't want to make the leap because it would mean deconstructing currency from the real economy. They don't want to do that.
Correct. And so for all the people saying we're going to get rid of the petrol, no, we're not for now, because there's no replacement for it. None. So the petrodollar is there because the petrodollar is convenient. You would just have to get the United States to start, playing a little bit. Scott is wrong on this. I always love when people say that, and I'm right on this. There is no replacement for the petrodollar. China has severe energy, vulnerabilities that have been exposed from this. But other things have emerged too at the same time. You heard about the major automobile industrialists from Europe and the United States that recently toured China and came back in the report they made. They said, we'll never be able to compete with China. We'll never be able to compete with China. China has perfected the art of innovative, responsive mass production, robotic-based. It's instantly, as the Chinese come up with new concepts, they can instantly program them in, and they're adapted. A car line can be changed, mid-production as improvements come up. They're outproducing the world. And the inefficiencies of the West, Europe, and the United States are so manifest that we're never going to catch up. I mean, this is a new reality right now, too. The supremacy, not superiority, supremacy of the Chinese model of industrialism is there. Now, China has to be careful because, they still have supply chain vulnerabilities. And as I said, we just found out that if we shut down the Strait of Hormuz, China's got problems until China gets more oil flow from Russia. There's talk about increased pipelines, et cetera. But
Yeah.
I think that this war has brought a lot of clarity to the global reality, where weaknesses are, where strengths are. I think what we found is that the world is far more vulnerable to. I mean, we always knew it, but the world pretended it wasn't. Danny, we've had this conversation. Everybody's threatened about it. What happens when the Strait of Hormuz. Remember before the war started? The Iranians are going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Then if there's a war, they're going to strike all the oil fields. Oil is going to jack up to $200 a barrel. And that'll be the end of the world. And we said that till we were blue in the face. Everyone went, nah, isn't going to happen. It happened. It happened. Yeah. And it's real. And what we're finding out is nobody was ready for this. The Chinese weren't ready for this. And so I think you're going to see a change in Chinese foreign policy, national security policy. Nobody likes to have this big a vulnerability. So I think you're going to see China altering its approach to energy security, to making sure that they don't have, single points of vulnerability like they do with the Strait of Hormuz. But I also think that you're going to see China move to transition away from military confrontation to economic competition. It's in China's interest to do that as well, because they're so dominant. They're just so dominant. I mean, I wish I had gone on that tour or could have seen what these guys said, but these CEOs were shocked about just how good China is and how bad we are. Because we're still, I mean, no offense to labor unions in America, but your union is the most inefficient capitalist tool ever. Your union is designed to be inefficient. And as a result, China, which doesn't have a union, is kicking our ass. Your union won't allow us to replace the inefficient worker with an efficient robot. And so we're trapped in a legacy model that's actually goes back to the 1930s. And China's just out there, legacy, just rolling ahead. I'm not picking on unions. I'm just saying this is a reality. We have a different, social, contract with our people, and it's holding us back. It's holding us back. That's it.
Yeah. Well, there is something very archaic about the U.S. Of course, what I would call like the race to the bottom, deindustrialization, this kind of thing, which leads to unions, especially what unions do exist, which is very few, but when unions do exist, especially in industry, wanting to hold on to whatever they have. And the companies, they're not looking to really innovate. They're looking to just make more money. And when they just want to make more money, then what they replace workers with is machines that may be more efficient, but they're more efficient at making money rather than more efficient at competing and building product and all of this. And so when I'm in China, I was just, and I'm going to have videos and stuff about this later on when I can. I don't want to put them on stream because it's a high bandwidth, but I just visited Ant Group, which is Alibaba and Alipay and all this, and then two companies that produce robots and all these things that the United States are very far behind. But I think for China, with the energy question, people that I've spoken to, John Weiwei and others, they say, it's not energy security internally that is really the big issue, because China has really done a good job on that. But China has a vision about the world which is different from the United States and does require stability. Even in energy markets, it really does require stability in energy markets, because China wants its excess production to be of use to others, because it has an excess production now. It used to others. That's why there's the Belt and Road Initiative, all of this, and that will require, short of being able to infuse the world with renewable energy, which it can do, but it won't be able to replace oil in a day. These oil-rich countries all across the region of the Middle East, they need to be a big part of what's going to be built in West Asia and Eurasia in general. So yes, a war like this and the edge and the Strait of Hormuz being, choked, that's not going to serve interest there. That will make it a lot harder for that to happen, and that will be really where the Chinese economic problems will come. Is yeah, China wants its excess production to be of use. Not necessarily, it's not outsourcing it to, what we do, outsourcing it to low tax havens and low wage labor. Oh, no, they want it to be used for others so they do more money making opportunities. And that is in capital intensive opportunities, all of this. That's really where the dangers are here, because a major war that lasts months and months and maybe years, like a lot of US wars do, that destabilizes energy markets, it hurts everybody, and it would start hurting everybody in the long term, despite the advantages of, let's say, a Russia with all of its oil, and a China with all of its production, and Iran with all of its sovereignty and furious strength and to defend its independence. Like but the economic situation will cause suffering for most of the world, and that's something that doesn't benefit a project that's meant to better the world. And so that's where I feel like a lot of the contradictions lie. But Scott, any final comments on this, and anything else that maybe we haven't talked about?
No, I mean, I write for a group, Energy Intelligence. It's a energy publishing consortium, and twice a month I'm supposed to produce an article on what they call the WEO, World Energy Opinion page. And for the last week, I've been supposed to write on this the ceasefire, and I can't, because it's a moving target. I mean, I'm afraid, because you're supposed to write something that at least is able to engage an audience for a week. It's okay to write something and then have the world change a week later, and you say, well, it was, you got to read it, you got to get informed, and as the world changed, at least you understood the foundation of that change. It's okay. You don't have to predict everything to the T. But on this situation, every day I literally have written this article 3 times, and I'm ready to hit send when I read the headlines and go, they can't publish this because it's already outdated. And so, it's frustrating, but that's the reality that we're in collectively. We try to, all of us, I mean, people watch your show in an effort to, become better informed. But the discussion we're having today is contingent upon one of the most irrational, unstable global leaders in the world, Donald Trump. We're having a conversation based upon Truth Social posting that he put out an hour ago. When this conversation ends, he may put out another Truth Social post that just basically blows our mind and goes the exact opposite.
Just kidding. Yeah, just kidding.
And then the other thing too is that I don't think people understand the global vulnerability that has emerged about energy security and the desperation that exists in many parts of the world. Again, I just point out, you go to Europe today, you got aircraft at every major airport taking off, flying, and they're doing this whole commercial interactivity. In 11 days, that all stops because there's no more aviation fuel. What happens when airplanes stop flying? What happens to the industries that are already over leveraged with banks? We are closer to global economic collapse than people understand. And that's the danger of this conflict, because there's a lot of emotions involved here. I mean, everybody wants Iran to stay the course. Stay the course, stay the course. Well, that's bad for Iran, because at some point in time, when you get global economic collapse, there's no longer an incentive to stop the war. And then Iran will just stay isolated forever. And that's not good for Iran. Then we also have, the pressures that are brought to bear by this global economic collapse on Donald Trump, because he will be blamed for this. This is his war. This is his tar baby. He's got to, free himself from this. But there's the politics here that are to play. At some point in time, if it becomes so apparent to Donald Trump that he's not going to reverse course, he'll find it. He may say, well, then I have to go full bore on war. If I can't get peace and convince the American people that I'm the greatest peacemaker that ever walked, and I deserve 3 Nobel Peace Prizes simultaneously put around my neck. If I'm going to lose the election, no matter what, because of this, then I might as well double down on another route and go the war route. So we're not out of the fire yet. We're, we've knocked down the flames, but we got some smoldering, embers out there, and we need to extinguish it. We're not there yet. It's we're in a very unstable period in global history right now, which sort of makes it fun doing what we do, but also makes it frustrating because you just don't know what's going to happen in the next hour or so because it's a changing. There's no foundation of stability upon which decisions are being made. We're dealing with a world that's very much chaotic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's. I don't think that's right. I know that's correct, and the reality bears fruit to that. Scott, I want to make sure everybody knows to go to scottritter.com in the video description after the show. That that is where you can find Scott's work, and you can support him financially and otherwise. As well as make sure you hit the like button before you go. I want to thank all the people who gave super chats as well. That is, we didn't even talk about this. Donald Trump says he will not unfreeze Iranian funds and will seize its enriched uranium. These are the kind of contradictory things you always hear from Trump. But again, as Scott said, none of that might matter tomorrow. So thank you for your super chats and everything that you provided here. And everyone who watched, moderators who helped out with the chat, everything. Scott, anything you want to say to the audience before we head out of here?
No, just to reiterate, if you go to my Substack, scottritter.com, I just published an article that provides sort of a report card on the trip I just made to Russia. The trip was made possible by the generous donations of audiences such as yours. So I'm telling you how I spent your money. And also putting on notice that in June, I'm going back. I call it the Revenge Tour because in 2024, I was supposed to go speak at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, and the State Department pulled my passport. And this year, I'm going to go speak at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum and fulfill the mission. And then I'm going to go on a 20-day trip someplace that's going to be pretty cool. But I would be asking for continued support because independent journalism doesn't happen unless you're truly independent. It'd be very easy for me to go out and get sponsors, but then you become beholden to those sponsors. The only way to do independent journalism is to be beholden to nobody. And that can only happen through generous donations. So if people are inclined to support this work, please go to scottritter.com, read the report card. If you think I get a passing grade, then maybe continue to support. But I thank everybody for the support they provided.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm here in China, and there'll be videos. Zhang Weiwei, I live streamed from here with him, and there'll be more too. But it's all because of support from this audience. So make sure you take heed. That's why I'm here. That's how I can get here, afford these tickets, which are not cheap anymore. They were never cheap, but not cheap now. Not cheap now. Oh my gosh, plane tickets are rough. So yeah, definitely everything Scott said. Take heed to it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hit the like button before you go. Scott Ritter's Substack and video description. All the places to support this channel there too. See you again next time. Bye-bye.